Welcome to the stage, David Elfring, Associate Vice President, Information Security, Werner Enterprises.
Need the clicker, don't need the glasses. All right. I detect the energy might be dropping here a little bit, so let's see if I can keep this moving along. So I'm functionally the Chief Information Security Officer for a trucking company in Omaha, Nebraska. We have 8,000 trucks, 10,000 drivers, 3,219 back office personnel, but who's counting? All right, so a little bit about me. Where did I come from? How did I get to this point where I'm up in front of this huge sales audience, which is a great opportunity for me? Can you please delete my desk phone from your CRM for the love of God and all that's holy? All right. So I've been at Werner Enterprises since 1997. I wanted to go work at this big online stock brokerage place in Omaha. Didn't really work out. They were too long, and so I went to work at Werner Enterprises, getting them connected to the internet. I had a career before that, and so the Air Force, in the 80s, sometime in the 80s, as I'll leave it at that, took a kid out of a hardware store in Winnemucca, Nevada, and taught him how to operate spacecraft. And so I don't buy lottery tickets for the reason I kind of won the lottery. I got the coolest job in the whole world. I got to be in a spacecraft operations center. I got to look at onboard systems like gyroscopes, reaction wheels, solar panels, all of those cool things. So this is, somebody said, well, this is more like your fourth career then, but again, who's counting? You know, once a tree gets to a certain size, it doesn't care about the number of rings that it has. It just goes, hey, I'm a tree. All right, so I was also part of Motorola's Iridium development. I worked for General Electric, done the space stuff. But I have a new mission, and that is business transformation, business relevance of information security. And it kind of brings me to a point, you know, that when you ask if a customer cares about security, you might get some strange looks. They're like, no, I care about how much money we're making. And then you have to begin to relate that to security. And some of that story, hopefully, will come out here. So I call this inauspicious beginning. In 2016, we had a new CIO appointed to the company. And he came from outside the company. And at some point, we had a discussion about 10 months later, and he said, you know, I think we need identity access management. I'm like, sure, I'll do it. And he said, where do you think it should? This is my inside voice. He's like, where should it be? I'm like, duh, InfoSec, let's put it there. And he's like, great, make that happen. So now I had to use my inside voice again, which was, what did I just do, and what am I going to get into? So the message here is, we know that identity and access management is critical. Chief security officers know that. People all over security know that. We may even have policies about it. You know, if you go back to, yes, your password must be 8 characters long. You have to change it every 3.2 days, and it can't be duplicated within 10 times of first setting it. I'm just kidding. We're not quite that bad. So we may have policies. We might be responsible for governance over it, but a lot of us don't actually plan it and do it. And so this slide deck is a little bit about my experience in doing that, where SailPoint came into the picture, and a little bit about why identity now. Actually, a lot about why identity now. So we're a mid-market, whatever that catchphrase was, mid-market major, mid-market something. So, all right. I want to start a little bit with some vision. I call it 2020 vision. It could be 2025. I'm not altogether sure, but it's a vision nonetheless. So we know this, that people have identities. And we have a lot more things that have identities. We have things that are acquiring identities all over the company. We have facilities all over the country. We operate in what I call the lower 48 states. We have trucks in Canada. We have probably about 150 people in Mexico. We have personnel in China. We have doors all over the place. We have gates. We have cases in which trucks and trailers, and these are not small things to steal, but they are stolen in part because of some identity-related processes around them. We're putting IoT in our trucks and our trailers. Our fleet is wired. Our drivers are wired via the trucks. The trailers are wired. We're tracking all these things. They have identities. The gates have identities. The doors have identities. It's starting to sound like that Colors of the Wind song on that old Disney movie, right? Let's make this a little bit better. Let's richen the pot. Let's put 12,000 brand new tablets out into the field. Those are going to have identities. We have to track all those. So we need the vision behind that to unify those identity services. I have to implement that. I have to deliver it. Well, actually, the nice part is I get to delegate a lot of that. But I have to be the cheerleader. I have to be the salesperson. So I do have some sales experience because I've sold a trucking company starting a whole security program. So we have to do these things. I think the most important part of this slide to me is, you know, when we did our ROI study, it seemed like big numbers to me. It seemed great. And yet, a year later, I look at that ROI study and I think, man, the CFO, when I reviewed it with him, was right. Most of that is hogwash. It's garbage. It just wasn't true. But we came up with one goal. We want day one productivity. We found out that a lot of our associates wait as long as 6 weeks to do their work. And that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable as a business. It's not acceptable to me with the fiduciary responsibility to the company to deliver value. I have to stand up in front of the board. I have to stand in front of the chief executive officer and say, we're helping you deliver value. This is part of what I have to deliver as a chief security officer. So first things first, what do we do with this, right? So I have to go back to the assessment phase. Well, I've got Gartner.com. What's Gartner going to tell me? So you go look at the Magic Quadrant, right? This is kind of, I'd say a cliche move, but you do this, right? Because I'm starting from the assumption that I don't know anything about identity as a process. Again, I govern it. I set rules around it. But do I really know how to deliver it? We made a kind of a real quick list, and we went, okay, what are we going to get? If we go, we pretty quickly brought on board a trusted advisor. And this, in this case, a trusted advisor who has background as a chief information security officer at a large hospital in Seattle who had delivered these services, because I wanted a vetted, experienced person who could say, hey, look, here's some trade-offs, here's some things to consider. And we knew we weren't going to have long to roll these out. The timeline was going to be short. So we needed quick initial value delivery. So we're like, well, SaaS, right? We avoid a lot of the back-end work, which is quite often responsible for large projects failing. We can get a quick value delivery. On-prem, we're going to go with a longer ramp-up time. My team really likes on-prem solutions. Why? Because they're complex. IT people love complexity. It's like, how can we make this really complex and confusing? That's our chosen solution. Higher IT investment. We knew, you know, we're starting something from scratch that we've never invested in. At the point where my executives said, all right, you know, we're in. Let's go ahead and do this. Investing in this, I know this isn't going to be a big number to a lot of you, but $1 million for a single item in the security budget for this company was not something that had ever happened before. Sure, we spend more than that on an annual basis, but getting $1 million in one shot out of my CFO, I think I won the lottery twice. So, less customizable, SaaS. Hopefully I don't offend anybody, but we called it the off-the-rack suit. As long as it fits you, it's great. If it doesn't fit, you don't have the high degree of customization. Reliability. Right? One of the things people worried about, maybe some still do, is they go, well, how reliable is that cloud infrastructure going to be? Well, it's actually really reliable. You know, is it 4 nines or 5 nines versus my on-prem? Does that really matter? Can we deliver? Can I don't know about my people, but can my IT organization deliver me 4 or 5 nines? I'm not going to say because I have to go back and review this with them, but I thought we were in better hands going with the cloud in this one. I think I used simplicity in here twice, but I wanted to use that as a highlight and a contrast. So there's, okay, here's a set of cloud services. You can go and start using them today, start integrating them today, or we can descend into the depths of Hades and start negotiating within all of the IT areas, within the IT departments. You're going to need storage, you're going to need virtual servers or physical servers, you're going to need all these things. I'm like, that's too much risk. So I want to talk a little bit about pragmatic aspects of starting an identity management program, a little bit about the vendor selection. This really came down to risk management. So I work in risk. I'm a risk management professional. And what I looked at in this is, what's the risk in this process? Which one of these is people, vendors, systems is not going to get me killed politically? I wasn't looking at your technology. I really wasn't. I wanted to be able to call 2 or 3 of my friends or people I just randomly grab business cards from at conferences and go, hey, what do you think about SailPoint? They're going to get me killed? Well, I made those calls and they said, I think you'll be all right. I think this will work. I can't go to, the Gartner MQ. Okay, that's great. That's fine. But I want to talk to people that are doing this. I want to talk to people that are delivering these solutions. And yes, I did get Andy Week's card. I do plan on calling him because he's got a whole lot of things I want to know. So greenfields, let me talk about, when I say greenfields are different, this goes back to that risk management process a little bit. You go into a customer who has nothing, they may not even have a concept of the right questions to ask. They may not really understand all the platforms. At the very beginning of this process, I really couldn't separate all of the people that I was reading about in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. They all looked equally good. Customer, I think somewhere in here, hopefully I'm not giving away one of my other slides, every sales deck essentially looks the same. You have something great. We know you have customers. Mental note to everybody here. Please I don't care who your customers are. It doesn't matter. I'll find them if I need them. But the customer slide, I'm glad that you have customers with really cool logos. I kind of like our logo, but it's not as snazzy as some others. So greenfields are different. They're operating quite often. They have no infrastructure. If there is infrastructure and process, it's isolated, it's siloed, it lacks maturity in terms of its operational maturity and development. So we're essentially starting with a great big mess. We may not know it yet, but we're going to find it. We're entering into known unknowns. For me, this is how I would phrase it. I have to go and find out all the things that I need. So let's just say I booked that $1 million deal right off the bat. I still have to go find all these things. Current customer goodwill matters a whole lot. If I talk to somebody, I'll relate, a discussion I had in June, right after I decided, okay, we're going to do this. I was at a Gartner conference and wound up talking to somebody and they said, hey, we started IAM. I'm like, oh, great, what'd you learn? Well, we didn't learn anything. We spent $2 million and we never got to the first phase 1 rollout. I'm like, awesome, I'm going to sleep so good tonight. Pre-sales engagement gut check. Knowing that I have somebody dealing with me earnestly matters. I don't want to feel like I'm just $1 figure on somebody's economic kill chain. That's not where I want to be. I want to know that I can reach out to somebody and I'll call out, our sales rep was awesome. So Gary Arisman, great job. I appreciated all your work and getting us through those levels of uncertainty, the last minute calls, the panic, all those things. So the pre-sales engagement gut check, it does matter. It matters a lot. It matters to me. More pragmatic selection. Why did we choose SailPoint? Well, it goes back to those calls. I called people I knew at large companies and they said, yeah, SailPoint, that'll work. I wanted a company that was large enough to deliver, but small enough to listen. Another company, I'm not going to name them, but they have 3 letters in their name. And when we talked to them, I couldn't even find the right people. I mean, it took 3 calls just to get to the call to start to find out who we needed to talk to. No, big X. Again, don't care about your technology. If I can't get through to the execution part of what I need to deliver, I just don't care about your technology. Informal chats with peers, covered that. Apparently I like that point where I say every sales deck looks great. You don't create them so they look like crap, that you just don't. A lot of work goes into those, so I'm not trying to usurp all the work that goes into those decks, but they are all great. No, very few of them look really bad. So that might be a novel sales angle, right? Make your deck look really bad and have people go, what are you doing? In the early stages of my evaluation, what did I know about your tech stack? I didn't. I had to know that you have a good tech stack. I had to be able to, but the way that I look at that is the reliability, the reputation, Am I seeing people on the forums, you know, Gartner has some forums, and people going, oh my God, this failed again, this isn't working, there are stability issues or maturity issues, and so the QA process that you have over your software matter a great deal. I think I had some regrets early in this creation process, the program creation process, because I didn't feel we did a very good proof of concept. In the end, after being partway through implementation and our first set of deliveries, I don't think it would have really mattered that much. How could I possibly test how we were going to integrate multiple accounts for one person on one target system? How would I test all of the quality issues in our HR repositories? How would I find all those wonderful hidden dead bodies in Active Directory? So POC projects, useful mainly in my opinion because of the familiarity, the chance to get to know your support, a little deeper engagement with your people. Challenges and hurdles. I'm not a huge fan of, you know, generic clip art, but I did specifically choose this one because what I found in creating a program is you get over the first hurdle and then you're like, hey, look, we cleared the first hurdle. Well, guess what? Here's another one, and it's taller. And every hurdle feels like it's just a little taller because you're getting drawn. It's like national treasure. You find this clue, and you get to this place, and you find out you have to steal the president's desk or remove something from the Oval Office. And that's kind of the way this goes sometimes, is you get in, you know, your initial success in rolling out, and then you find out there's something even bigger like, hey, by the way, why don't you clean up all this enterprise data that's spread out all over, and it lives within 3 different silos within IT, and you need it in order to deliver the services that you're tasked with and that they're going to hold you responsible and accountable for. You can see why I love this job, right? Early planning. We had to gain executive approval. I was kind of joking with somebody that maybe the executive approval wasn't the hardest part of this process. The things that came after that, to me, were harder. We sat in a meeting for about 45 minutes, and at the end of that, the CEO and the CFO and some other people with O's said, all right, Dave, we're behind you. We will do this. Of course, the funny part was like 45 days later when they said, is that installed yet? Is it running? Like, yeah. We haven't even found a person to manage it yet. So vision, scope, budget, plan. We gathered key metric data about current identity-related things, and we found a really shocking and scary number, which was, I believe it was about 12,000. It was about 12,000 hours of labor consumed in meaningless, mindless, mind-numbing, horrible tasks that people were doing. This was part of the sales angle that I had for my own executives, is the inefficiency. What I also discovered is if you show the CFO, I don't know about everybody's CFOs, but when I show my CFO a number and I say, hey, there's 12,000 hours being consumed by people, we believe this is our ROI number, that we can eliminate those hours, and the next thing he says is, great, when do I see 7 people disappear? Just so you know, if you're going to push people for ROI numbers, the CFO might call you on it. I got called on it. So here's another challenge, selling your own staff. When I selected Identity Now, I did it without any staff being on board. I had no identity team yet. I had to create that team. I didn't anticipate that I would find highly qualified people that were going to work at a trucking company and create identity processes, but lo and behold, I found 2 people which combined have probably close to 20 years of identity IQ experience. In having that identity IQ experience, there was about a 2-month period where I think every day I had to answer the question, no, we're not getting identity IQ. Yes, you have to use Identity Now, because they wanted to immediately get in there and customize it and make it really complex, because that's what a lot of technical people really like. Endless IT dependencies. Hey, we found the HR repository. Repositories. How many repositories? Like 3 or 4. We're still figuring it out, but we'll let you know if there's any problems. I'm like, oh my God, this just sounds like a service-related nightmare to me. So limitless IT dependencies. These are some of the things that we have to kind of unravel. Passive-aggressive resistance. So even if you're going to improve something, it can be hard to sell people on it because it's change. And this is part of the thing that when you're creating something where there wasn't anything, you have to overcome the resistance to change. If there's any people here who have read John P. Cotter, he's one of my favorite change-related authors, because it gives you insights into not necessarily making change less scary, but creating, an avenue to get people's support, to gaining initial inertia, so that a change becomes self-sustaining in some way. And then there's implementation, occasional kabooms. It's kind of like when you hear something under the hood of your car and you're not sure what it was, you kind of hope it goes away, but then the car dies and you're like, oh, great. I gotta stop, get out, open the hood, and pointlessly look into the engine compartment and hope I can figure out what the heck that was. So I'll talk real briefly. So back to change for a moment. I call it moving the oregano. Years ago, I managed a Greek festival for our community. And inevitably, there'd be some scream, blood-curdling scream. There's vendetta, there's hate, and there's all kinds of bad things going on. Why? Somebody moved the spices around. If you go into the kitchen, you cook with a spouse, and they move the spices, this is a problem. So hopefully I didn't already give this all away. So I wanted to use a gambling metaphor, because when I decided to do this, and when I got approval for the $1 million expenditure from the executives, I had to go all in on my chips. I'm literally kind of betting my career. And so when you sell me Identity Now, some part of this, and it's different in different instances, but this is a huge single expenditure. I'm putting my career on the line. This could be a career-ending maneuver if that goes sideways. Integration with legacy tech stack. So we, by August of 2017, I think we knew. We were like, I think it's Identity Now, I think it's SailPoint. We had to vet it out. And so we figured out who we wanted to pick, and then we went back and did our due diligence in order to kind of say that we did our due diligence. It may sound backward, but we did, true due diligence. We had to look at it because we wanted to know. We have these things in our company. We're actually kind of proud of them. They're not commonly found today. They're called AS400s. I know, right? You're like, really? They have these green screens, those green screen things? Yeah. Actually, 80% of our revenue is generated through the business activities that take place on these green screens. So we like those, but they have their own peculiarities, and they're not commonly found. SailPoint was able to, I don't know if convince us, reassure us, to give us a level of confidence that, yes, we can integrate to those AS400s. Already talked to the avoidance of the IT complexity pitfalls, but there's a lot of complexity. When you start getting into on-prem, because I live in the middle of an on-prem type company, we're still going through the initial, death throes of the death of on-prem legacy, and it's a pretty loud, screaming, ugly fight sometimes. And oddly enough, as the security leader in the company, I'm fully on board with going cloud, because I'm going to get that integration, I'm going to get the security. My own security team cannot deliver, or my own IT team cannot deliver me the same level of security around Exchange and email services that Microsoft can give me. I'm starting from a trusted platform. So some things that again, we weighed. SaaS may not have full feature parity, but this is the gamble. Do we feel that SailPoint is going to keep innovating? Is SailPoint going to keep moving? Are they happy where they're at? Judging by one of the talks I heard this afternoon, the answer is no. You constantly want to be uncomfortable with where you're at, so you're always getting to a higher place. So I had to gamble on that. Let's talk about speed dating. Yep, this is my speed dating slide. So things that I look for when I look at a sales proposal. Clarity. Move the price to the front. Just do it. Don't put it in the back. I'm not going to read all that stuff. I'm going to thumb through it until I get to the price. So the sales and, I'll call it the SE, kind of the technical person who helps the salesperson. Do they take the time to actually grasp what our needs are? Do they understand? You don't have to understand everything about my business, but you should know what my business is. You should know enough about it and the specifics of my implementation to help me get through the front end of understanding, without again diving into the full tech stack, why you're going to be able to deliver for me. Because let's go back to that career-ending maneuver type thing, right? I need to know I'm not going to die in this process. Generic use cases, to me, they're of limited value. I'll look at it, but it's probably not going to help me a great deal. Generic return on investment, again, when you're talking ROI, there's two ways you can read ROI. I might look at it and be very impressed, but the CFO is going to have a little different outlook on it. So we did do an ROI study. We did use those numbers, and we figured out, based on the inefficiencies that we had, honestly, we still have a lot of them, we could probably break even in 14 months. Not on the first year of the services, on the entire investment, based on the number of wasted hours, based on people waiting 6 weeks to be able to do meaningful work. That's a business problem. That's a business problem that you can help with. It's a business problem that I have to help with if I'm going to run an identity management process. Poor customer service is not acceptable. People think trucking company and they go, well, you guys are probably all old school, right? There's some of that, but we still deliver services. We have diverse sets of services spread across multiple continents, and we are in constant motion. The biggest rule of thumb is trucks move 24/7, 365, every week of the year. They're always moving. And there's a lot of complexity back there, but we are trying to modernize, and I need partners that are going to be part of that modernization. We found that within part of this inefficiency thing, there were over 140 different access request forms hosted on our company intranet. And they were actually Microsoft Word documents that somebody converted into a web form, if that gives you any idea how much fun these are to do. So along the way, we smoked out some siloed and largely undocumented IAM processes. And we had a meeting with one of our internal development groups, and we said, why are you doing identity and access management? And they said, well, we're not. We're just allowing 10,000 people to log into this application. I'm like, okay, we'll talk a little bit more later. First, I got to get some things running. Boy, I beat that one to death. On-prem solution logistics. But the logistics of on-prem just takes too long. There's too much risk. I could not do it. You know, again, going back to the proposal I had from a company with 3 letters in their name, it was a valid proposal. I think they would have probably done a good job, but I could not undertake that extra risk. I'm already going out on a limb here. I'm already taking risk. So I went cloud. I wanted to start tackling the business problems right away. Once I asked for $1 million, the timer starts. Are we ready to deliver? When are we going to deliver? What are we going to deliver? How soon can we do it? If the answer is, well, I'm going to take about a year, and I'm going to set up a whole bunch of stuff. It's going to cost you more money, by the way. And then at the end of that year, I'm going to start to deliver you some value. That's not a buying proposition. What's next? I don't know, it's an old song, you know, what have you done for me lately? So, you know, one thing I just realized I left off here is we started our identity, we signed the agreement to purchase Identity Now, and I think it's in the timeline, and in order to keep, you know, things moving along, we may not get to the entire timeline. But we signed that agreement in December, end of December 2017. Starting in 2018, I had no department, I had no people. All I really had was the executive signature on, yeah, go spend $1 million. So we had to start that. And I wasn't able to hire that identity manager until about February. And yet, despite not having any people, we were able to deliver our first full implementation, which included 1 or 2 technical kabooms, by October. So in reality, I had an identity manager that delivered Active Directory synchronization, HR repository synchronization, and integration and synchronization into my AS400s, those black obelisks in the back of the data center that convert electricity into heat really, really well. They're good platforms. I'm going to get, hopefully nobody's taping this, because if it gets back, I'm probably fired again. So what have you done for me lately? So we get through all that in October, and suddenly the CIO comes in and goes, oh, yeah, that's really cool. Hey, we got these 10,000 truck drivers. have you figured that one out yet? I'm like, dude, we just dropped this like last week. So now you want 10,000 truck drivers. Mobile workforce by definition, always moving, always on the go. By the way, there's an 80% turnover rate, and we just spent $1 million to buy each one of them a license in Azure Active Directory. Uncharted territory. Well, we just barely got into the cloud with SailPoint. Now we're talking federated identity and in a role that's immediate and business critical. Real quickly, I hope if you have a chance and you want to look at the timeline, there's some funny things in here. So we inked the deal. We're evaluating a vendor proposals. Well, that's backward. But there is one really funny moment. In the end of December, I have to go to my executive council to get approval. 2 days before that, I go to the CFO, and my whole argument's based on return on investment, to which he says, your ROI strategy is hokum. I'm like, whatever that is, I don't think it's good. All right, one more timeline, and that's it. That's all I got for you today.